Chapter 55, Glast Subjugation War 4. When too many things happen all at once such that my head goes into overdrive, rationality always comes lagging behind, taking its sweet time to return. That's why it took some time for Aila to regain her senses. The fact that the demon in the underground sewer across from her had succumbed entirely to the sleep spell, never to wake up. If she did not resist and just sat quietly in the prison cell, it seemed she would not face any immediate threat to her personal safety. The realization that her racing mind had finally calmed down somewhat. The amalgamation of these factors finally allowed her to regain composure, and her trembling legs came to a halt. Tylee. Buried in her knees, she plaintively called out that name, but there was still a long time to go before Tylee would arrive. Aila, however, had vaguely known this. Tylee would definitely come to rescue her. Yet the shame and resentment of always being nothing more than a burden weighed heavily on her. A mix of sorrow and self-loathing surged in her chest. It wasn't a lack of trying on her part. Aila may have been desperately lacking in innate talent in the combat field, but her proficiency in intellectual and scholarly disciplines was not to be underestimated. Her ability to grasp and implement magical knowledge was acknowledged by even Professor Glast, a testament to her potential as a scholar. However, it was maddening and abominable to acknowledge that, without help, she couldn't do anything on her own. More humiliating than any other incompetence was her own sense of powerlessness. Once again, she would have to rely on the help of numerous others. Even the aid of Ed Rothtailor, a man she loathed so much that just seeing his face made her grind her teeth, was sought. He left Aila alone inside the safe cell and went out on his own to tackle the situation. Looking back, there was no way to politely express how unbelievable it was, but he had considered the flustered Aila in his actions. Honestly, it was more frightening than reassuring. The mere thought of raising one's hand could make one flinch at the prospect of receiving a slap. Resentment. Emotions are always followed by expectations. The shape of those expectations differs with each individual. Just as one might wish for their beloved to always be righteous and good, they also expect the object of their resentment and hatred to be evil, twisted, and mean-spirited. After all, such alignments grant justification and righteousness to oneself in their opposition. But to admit that the despised individual is also upright, has their own beliefs and sense of justice, and depending on the perspective, could be reasonable, admitting this does not come easily to one's pride. Yet, Aila couldn't help but acknowledge this fact. The reputation surrounding Ed at the academy, the full support shown by the second-year top ranker, his decisive and composed attitude during the Glaskin incident. Moreover, despite being kidnapped together, he showed no signs of panic, maintaining a composed demeanor. In dealing with Aila, who behaved antagonistically and warily towards him, Ed displayed no hurt feelings. Aila knew what to call such a temperament. It was tolerance. Whether deliberately causing harm, placing blame, speaking ill, or even attempting to exploit, everything was within his realm of control. The balance of power was completely in Ed's favor, be it sheer physical strength, magical ability, or even in terms of mental fortitude. Despite this, Ed appeared to want to help and save Aila rather than just leaving her to her fate, a stark contrast to the arrogant attitude he displayed during the entrance exams. If only he had been this way from the start. Why had he acted so foolishly during the entrance exams, thus earning such resentment? Even though he seemed ready to play the part of a senior, dealing with urgent matters with gravity and seriousness, he asserted that Tylee would be sure to come to the rescue, showing an absolute trust in Tylee. Why then had he acted so poorly towards Tylee during the entrance exams, ruining his own reputation? Aila Triss. You've been watching Tylee for a while now, so you would know, but that guy grows stronger with each trial. Single quote. In a critical situation, his voice was as rooted and unshakable as an ancient tree. Aila knew. Tylee almost seemed fated for adversity, as if their life was filled with nothing but trials. And with each obstacle surmounted, they climbed another step of growth. It's certain that it won't end up being good. So, won't you wait just a bit longer? Even if it takes time, I'll take responsibility and secure the seal again myself. Quote, "What on earth are you talking about?" Frustration surged within Lortel's chest. The principal of Sylvania Academy, Obel Forcius, was nothing short of a monster, a master in every field. Whether it was actual combat power or magical capability, the only one in the faculty and students of the academy who could truly measure up to Obel was the lazy genius of the first year, Lucy Mayrill. If Obel Forcius were to roll up his sleeves and step in personally, no matter what Glast tried, he would be subdued in an instant. But Obel only issued a search order to his staff and did not intend to step in personally. Seeing such an attitude, Lortel wanted to press him to retrieve the seal himself, but given the difference in their positions, it was awkward to urge him to that extent. So, Lortel listened with a focus to understand just what he was saying. And then an unbelievably harsh truth invaded his ears. What Professor Glast was researching through Saint Tier magic was the traditionally forbidden realm of resurrection magic. Quote, "No matter how limitless the pursuit of academia, there were clearly realms of magic in its long history that were taboo. 3 areas defied the laws of the world, obscuring the flow of the present and rejecting the framework of fate for humans: the pursuit of eternal life, raising the dead, and reversing time. These were taboos, challenging the providence by twisting fate and defying the divine will granted to the human race. No matter how much Saint Tier magic avenues there were that dealt with time itself, altering the already determined past was not tolerated. After all, there are scant mages that have even reached such a level to begin with. You knew about this, and let it slide, Principal. That's a tricky issue. I did receive all the reports on the research records of Professor Glast, but he wouldn't blatantly report such wayward research in writing, would he? It was just a guess, now it's a certainty. He had a habit of lavishly praising the great sage of Sylvania. Quote, "Considering reports on Professor Glast's research achievements, his past, and his proclivities, it was enough to think in that direction. But there could be no assurance." Lortel glanced around at the expressions of the other academy staff. Vice Headmaster Rachel and Chief Dean McDowell had their eyes closed meditatively. However, other academy staff seemed utterly oblivious, surprised as if hearing it for the first time. It had been a secret that only a few amongst the staff knew. Not to speak ill, but, Headmaster Obel, you want to ask if I've lost my mind, Lortel Cahelm. But, I am, at least, curious about Glast's last choice. Quote, "What do you mean by that? Do you remember what Professor Glast used to say habitually? His angst over the advancement of scholarship. His respect for the true scholar, the great sage Sylvania, and the pining over what was lost." Quote, for Lortel, who knew of Professor Glast's past, these were words that couldn't be taken lightly. Everyone lies to themselves to some degree. Quote, "It was an obsession with talent that defined the man known as Professor Glast." Yet Lortel had his suspicions. Was this obsession truly a reflection of Glast's sincere nature? Or was it merely a defensive mechanism resulting from the anguish of what he had lost? That intense fixation on the value of talent, which he believes should never be presumed if it seems superficial and fleeting. It could be as simple as it appears, a father's sentiment, futile in an effort to make his daughter's untimely death not be in vain. Was he a lofty academic or a grief-stricken father? Unable to easily categorize Professor Glast, Lortel felt engulfed in confusion. If he truly discovered Saint Tier magic capable of reviving the dead. Quote, "The great sage Sylvania, a saint who would dramatically advance the world and revolutionize the history of magic. Murray, his daughter, who died tragically after being prematurely encouraged to trust her ambiguous talent. Do you think, who Professor Glast would try to revive?" Lortel looked up at Obel. The depths of his eyes, as vast as the sea, gave no indication of what he might be seeing. Bang, treble, Headmaster Obel, we have sighting information from the academic building. The studious student Aila was seen chasing Professor Glast, who was fleeing toward the sewer just minutes ago. According to eyewitnesses, it's not just the seal, he's also kidnapped a student. Confirmed identities include a first year from the magic department, Aila Triss, and a second year, Ed Rothtaylor. Kaboom! Just then, as Lortel couldn't believe what he heard, a massive bang rang out across the sky above the academic buildings, followed by vibrations. Lortel darted down the hallway and flung open a window. From the Trix Pavilion located on the hill on the outskirts of the academic building, you could approximately see the whole academic district. Near the coast off Akan Island, where the sewer entrance lay, he saw a familiar, and frankly too familiar, high-ranking spirit. Though it was incredibly far in terms of distance, its massive size was clearly visible even from this Trix Pavilion. The high-ranking fire spirit, Tarkon. The fearsome fire lizard that only the ace members of the first year could barely subdue if they all went at it together. Its roaring and thrashing tail seemed like a petulant child demanding someone be brought immediately. A single high-ranking spirit was enough to require top students to emerge to subdue it without damage. If left alone, who knows what could happen? It seemed unlikely that the Sylvania Institute would be affected as it was heading towards the outskirts of Akan Island. Yet in the worst case, the agitation could result in the loss of the seal. After all, they hadn't even paid the price yet, so even if the seal was lost, there would be no direct loss on the ledgers, there might be lost profits but not a deficit. Nonetheless, the seal, I want it too badly. Ah, seriously. Ultimately, Lortel sighed, pulling at his hair. Nothing ever seemed to go right. With things like this, I'm going to the sewer as well. Excuse me, Commissioner, what about the empathic ritual? The company's staff looked at Lortel in shock, but Lortel shook his head. And he gave Headmaster Obel a glaring look. Despite the rudeness, Obel seemed unperturbed. With the principal showing such indifference, I will have to go and get the seal myself. Everyone follow me except for a minimum negotiation team. Sigh. 5 minutes before the grand chaos party. It was only a matter of time before Ed's clothes would burst. The greatest victim might be Professor Glast. To blame him for a rash decision for kidnapping a ticking time bomb worse than Aila, he was dealt with severely limited information. There was no one to offer a moment of silence. Asterisk. Reverse journey. The endgame scenario, which flows from the Trix Pavilion, academic building chase route, sewer entrance, deepest part of the sewer, secret research facility entrance, soul library, monster research wing, deep within the research room, was a familiar route. However, retracing this route in reverse was an amusing experience. Most likely, Tylee would be on the regular course, so they could run into each other somewhere in the middle. I escaped from the deepest part of the research room and carefully passed by the monster research wing. Breaking through the monster research wing was not difficult. Most of the monsters were confined to the research facilities, and the area didn't have many permanent staff. This part tends to be difficult because CUM would release all the confined monsters from the research facilities. However, there were no obstacles now. The problem was the Soul Library. Librarian Reyna, who guarded the Soul Library, had excellent observation skills and was adept at detection magic. Even the lower spirit muck took a long while to sneak in with its weak force. I leaned against the back door of the library and took a quick look inside. The floating shelves and spellbooks. And all kinds of precious magical engineering equipment and formulas. Given I've made it this far, I wanted to sweep them all up and take them with me. It makes sense to grab everything I can while I'm here anyway. Right now, escaping this research facility to meet up with Yenica is the priority, so I should just choose the most efficient items. I must do so without drawing Reyna's attention. Ed, sir, are you perhaps drooling? Quote. I quickly composed my expression and checked the items I needed to take. Reyna's patrol patterns and behaviors were simpler than expected. It wouldn't take too long to collect everything. To inflate my magical engineering skills on this rare opportunity did make me feel a bit giddy. Especially as my specs have been plateauing lately. With the right materials, I could craft magical engineering gear that shouldn't exist in a level 2 to 3 arc, an opportunity indeed. My heart pounded with anticipation. Nevertheless, I couldn't get too immersed in collecting formulas and magical engineering gear. First, I stuffed as much as I could carry on my person and planned to return after Tylee had passed to collect the rest slowly. My priority was to meet with Yenica. Still, the thrill of a windfall fluttered in my heart. A bargain sale. Where's Ed? The mid-boss of the second phase of the Glast subjugation second act, Dorothy Whitepelts. She held considerable pride in her abilities. Dorothy, a third year, was recognized as a combative alchemist in the alchemy division. Not the valedictorian of her entire class, but she made it to the top of the alchemy division. Using all sorts of combat serums, instant chemical reactions, and mass-produced magical engineering goods, Dorothy's prowess in combat was troublesome even for combat division students. The top alchemy students of both the first year, Elvira, and the second year, Norton, often came seeking her guidance. For Dorothy, Professor Glast, who recognized her talent when it was yet to blossom, was a benefactor. When all had underestimated Dorothy's capabilities, only Glast had affirmed her. If it was Professor Glast, he must have had a reason for his seemingly aggressive actions. Thus, Dorothy gladly took part in Glast's plan. Though she might not know the exact intentions, she decided to fulfill his request to guard the entrance to the sewer. But still, that's a bit much, isn't it, Professor? Musing to herself, Dorothy sat by the shallow stream of the sewer entrance, forced to face Tarkon's bellowing maw as if to incinerate the world. Where's Ed? She was familiar with that rosy-haired girl. The beloved princess of the academy. Where she walked, they say flowers bloom. Her bright smile supposedly warmed the hearts of those who see it. That comforting smile was still present. The beaming face so charming and adorable, if you lost focus, you might reach out to stroke her hair. Yet, there would be none who could. Above her, a massive lizard blazed with fire, dripping saliva. While Yenica was trying her best to ask politely and considerately, the disparity with that backdrop only intensified a sense of fear. Yes, Yenica, so, I'm just here to guard this spot. I was just following orders. Yeah, startled, Dorothy stuttered out her words. Ah, I see, oh, wait, you're a third-year senior. I'm sorry for speaking informally, I was out of it. Dorothy's response showed understanding and then a hesitant, polite apology. Only then did Dorothy intuitively realize that the good-hearted Yenica was indeed in front of her, about to relax in. But with that said, where's Ed? The kind-hearted Yenica notwithstanding, the heat of the seething lizard had no mercy in dealing with Dorothy. Dorothy felt her strength wane, tumbling down helplessly. If you want to have more videos like this, then like and subscribe to my channel.